FOMO, fear of missing out. It's a phrase many young people use these days. I usually think of it in association with not going to bed because you might miss out on fun with family or friends. Sometimes it's the fear of missing out on an opportunity or a trip. Indy, my youngest daughter, has some serious FOMO at times. Not that she refuses to go to bed. Thankfully, she's a good sleeper. But she always is worried that she's missing out on the yummy food. Since she's a baby and only has 4 teeth, I do what most parents do and cut her food into little bites for her. But to her, that makes the food completely different than the food on everyone else's plate. And she is convinced that we're holding out on her. And she wants the food that's on everyone else's plate because she's afraid that she's missing out on the really good stuff. Well, the fear of missing out tends to plague the younger generation more acutely. I think no matter what your age, you can relate to the feeling that you might be missing something. We think of opportunities, food, things, the best price, or fun that others might be having that you're left out of. What if we saw the disciples as having FOMO in this morning's passage? How would that change our perspective? Maybe that would help us have new empathy for them and look at them in a different way. In the beginning of this passage, Jesus is wanting to get away for some much needed rest, for time in prayer with God. So Jesus travels to a desolate land, but to his surprise, people follow him, still hungering for his miraculous power and for his teaching. Looking at the crowd, Jesus sees that his work is not done. He does not have time to rest. He must continue, so he does. In the middle of that desolate land, Jesus heals and teaches. As time goes on, the disciples nervously look at one another and realize that there's not enough food to feed all these people. So they think that's it, that there's nothing more we can do. We have to send these people home. But Jesus, who doesn't stop preaching and teaching even when he needs rest, says, no, it's not time. It's not the end. We can still feed these people both spiritually and physically. It's not over. We are enough and we have enough. And if you read closely, it is the disciples that distribute the food, not Jesus. Jesus just prayed over it. While the disciples may have been worried that they would miss out on their own dinner if they shared what they had, there was more than enough for the disciples to eat too. So a miracle happens. And with only a small amount of food, an entire crowd is fed. I think we all know that anxiety expressed by the disciples. If we share, we might miss out on something. We are afraid of hunger, so we end up stuffing ourselves. We are so worried that there won't be enough in the future that we hold tight to our stuff. How many of us have balanced the checkbook or checked our accounts and felt the crushing feeling that there might not be enough? Or how many of us don't really want to lend our time leading a committee or doing volunteer work because we worry we won't have time left for ourselves? How does that anxiety of missing out on what you think is yours affect your life? What if we took out fear from this equation? What could God do with that? The irony is what the disciples were afraid of missing out on didn't even matter in the end. It was insignificant to what actually happened. In divine multiplication, they were able to feed 5,000. They just wanted a meal for themselves, but God was able to do something miraculous. That's how God works. You see, we are often focused on fears right before us and missing out on some kind of fun or stuff or time or attention, that those things end up having little significance in the end. The disciples were focused on just full bellies for one evening, that they couldn't even imagine what God could do if they let go of that fear. That is how God works. God works in loss and giving up. Faithful people are able to touch the holy and receive life far beyond they could even imagine. When the disciples lost Jesus, in the end, they could only see what they lost. They couldn't even comprehend the life that was right in front of them. The thing I am most focused on losing or missing out on these days is what Jesus gave up in this passage: time alone. As a working mother, that is something I miss dearly during the time of COVID. I, like Jesus, constantly see that the job is not done. But maybe you're in a different place during this pandemic. Maybe you are anxious to help, but feel stuck at home and unable to give your gifts. I know my mother sees my 2 lively children jumping all over me in video calls and yearns to come over and help, but can't. If you are overworked or desperate to work or help, both places feel like desolate locations. You could be bone tired or feel so alone it hurts. In both places, you're afraid you're missing out on life and vitality. Well, Jesus is telling us to show up in this place, in this desolate place, because we have something to share. Stop focusing on what is lacking or what you might be missing out on or what you might lose. Take that fear out of the equation and instead focus on how you can show up and be faithful in this desolate place. Because this is the miracle. This is divine mathematics. The thing we're afraid of losing might mean less than we think it does in the end. If you are beyond tired and don't know if you can do more or give, you are enough, and there is enough. If you are lonely and don't know if you have anything to do or give, you are enough, and there is enough. We were born, we were designed to share and serve. Pope Francis is quoted as saying, "Rivers do not drink their own waters, trees do not eat their own fruit, the sun does not shine on itself, and flowers do not spread their own fragrance for themselves." Living for others is a rule of nature. We are born to help each other, no matter how difficult it is. What do you have to share today in this place, in this time? It may seem small and insignificant, but God can do great things with small. Amen.